36th Rose. Freed from Satan. In 1578, a woman in Anvers had given herself to the devil and had signed the contract with her own blood. Shortly afterwards, she was stricken with sincere remorse and had an intense desire to make amends for this terrible deed. So she sought out a kind and wise confessor, who advised her to go to Father Henry, one of the fathers of the Dominican friary, who was director of the Rosary Confraternity in that town, to ask him to enroll her in it and hear her confession. Accordingly, she went to ask for him, but met not Father Henry, but the devil disguised as Dominican father. The latter scolded her pitilessly and said that she could never hope to receive Almighty God's grace again as long as she lived, and that there was absolutely no way in which she could regain possession of her contract. This grieved her greatly, but she did not quite lose hope of God's mercy and sought out Father Henry once more, only to find the devil a second time and to meet with a second rebuff. She came back for the third time, and then at last, by divine providence, she found Father Henry in person, the priest whom she had been looking for, and he treated her with very great kindness, urging her to throw herself upon the mercy of Almighty God and to make a good confession. He then received her into the confraternity and told her to say the Rosary frequently. One day, while Father Henry was saying Mass for her, Our Lady forced the devil to give her back the contract which she had signed. In this way, she was delivered from the devil by the authority of Mary and by her devotion to the Most Holy Rosary. 37th Rose. A monastery reformed. A noble man who had several daughters entered one of them in a lax monastery, where the nuns were very proud and thought of nothing else but worldly pleasures. The nun's confessor, on the other hand, was a zealous priest and had a great love for the Holy Rosary. Wishing to guide this nun into a better way of life, he ordered her to say the Rosary every day in honor of the Blessed Virgin while meditating on the life, passion, and glory of Jesus Christ. She joyously undertook to say the Rosary, and little by little she grew to have a repugnance for the wayward habits of her sisters in religion. She developed a love for silence and prayer, and this in spite of the fact that the others despised and ridiculed her and called her a fanatic. It was at this time that a holy priest, who was making the visitation of the convent, had a strange vision while he was making his meditation. He saw a nun in her room, wrapped in prayer, kneeling in front of a lady of breathless beauty who was surrounded by angels. The latter had flaming spears, with which they repelled a crowd of devils who wanted to come in. These evil spirits then fled to the other nuns' rooms under the guise of wild animals. By this vision, the priest became aware of the lamentable state the monastery was in, and he was so upset that he thought he might almost die of grief. He immediately sent for the young religious and exhorted her to persevere. As he pondered on the value of the Rosary, he decided to try to reform the sisters by means of it. He bought a supply of beautiful rosaries and gave one to each nun, imploring them to say the Rosary every day, even going so far as to promise them that if they would only say it faithfully, he would not try to force them to alter their lives. Wonderful and strange as it may seem, the nuns agreed to this pact and were glad to be given the rosaries and promised to say them. Little by little, they began to give up their empty and worldly pursuits, letting silence recollection come into their lives. In less than a year, they all asked that the monastery be reformed. So the Holy Rosary worked more changes in their hearts than the priest could have worked by exhorting and commanding them.